Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Fandom Roulette podcast, where two nerds are going to talk about nerdy stuff. I'm Cody.
And I am Joe.
It's been a
And
hot minute since we've done one of these, huh?
we're back,
We're back,
baby.
baby. Yeah, I love it. So,
Yeah.
to give context, we, for people who are just following, we started off as just the Fandom Roulette podcast, where we did a rotating show of just whatever we wanted to talk about, and have since moved over to a different format. But we use this as kind of our time to talk about nerdy things that don't quite fit the shows that we're doing currently. And for those of you who are wondering about worldsmithing, if you're following along, we're going to retool the worldsmithing format so that it's a little more compact, and it's showing more about what we're doing and like the mechanics behind it and stuff like that. So for this episode that'll kind of be taking its place, we're going to talk about a book that is coming out, and I believe, well, I'm really uh in a good
Yeah.
this is a good intro cuz
Yeah, for sure.
I forgot when this came out. This comes out online November 17th. Now in the past,
Whoa.
usually it comes out like a month or half a month early if you like go to a bookstore and like pick it up yourself. But so far, Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, a new D&D rules expansion supplement, is coming out November 17th, 2020. And
Wait,
I
what's it
am
called?
Tasha's Cauldron of Everything.
But didn't Xanathar already publish a guide to everything?
He did. However, he forgot what was inside the cauldron.
Yeah, I was about to okay. Can I can
So
I
here's the
can I
thing:
say
if you put Xanathar and Tasha together, it creates a black hole.
like okay, wait. Okay. God. No, I need a no, we need to explore this. I'm sorry. Uh,
No, I
Choose
mean that's what we're here for. We're
choose
here
a
to talk about this.
choose a different word. Like
It is a little weird. I mean, I get the naming convention because they want people to know it's a supplement book like Xanathar's Guide to Everything, but it's weird that it's. I figured it would have been like Tasha's Cauldron
like
of like.
Tasha's cauldron of like immense knowledge or like
Sure, I would have
or
taken anything, but
or yeah, like I don't know. It just strikes me as weird that we had Xanathar's guide to everything. So
and
what?
now we have.
Is Xanathar a goddamn liar? A god's damn
Well,
liar?
I mean, yeah,
Well, clearly it's
Xanathar.
not everything. If
Yeah.
we had to have another book with everything, well, what happens with the next book when it's like Mordekainen's like I don't know, theater troupe of everything,
Hell yeah. That's a book I'm looking forward to. Granted, it
or
won't come for another like 4 years, but
what's another famous wizard? At that point, we'll have sixth edition. Um,
I'm that's a conversation we're definitely going to have a
that's for
conversation
another
on
day.
like
Yeah.
Lore Master or something, but yeah. So I sent you a list of
Yes.
everything that has been revealed at this point. So they've been doing kind of this cool, because like I think the initial post or the initial announcement came out a couple weeks ago, but like it was just kind of like what you would find on the back cover, and like that's cool, but like I kind of wanted to see more. And like they've been like kind of slow dripping all the stuff that's coming out,
Mm.
and we've got
Mm.
quite a lot of stuff as I'm scrolling through this list. We got a ton of classes and subclasses.
Yep.
um
Looks like
there's
Artificer is going to be officially canon. Oh wait, no,
Yeah,
it's from Eberron, but
it's being reprinted from Eberron, but instead of being, it's like a um what's the word I'm looking for? Instead of being like a very like event specific book, because like I tend to like, because like don't get me wrong, I like Eberron Rising from the Last War book. Very cool. I haven't finished it yet because Lord knows I never have time to read like complete adventure books. But like
uh
I kind of don't take those as like, because the thing is, if you want to be an artificer, you have to pick up this weird adventure book in order to play it. Whereas like this book is going to be like 22 new subclasses, 5 reprinted subclasses from other books, not including the Artificer. Like there's a lot. Like I think you get a lot more value from picking up this book as a player than you would like Eberron Rising from the Last
Mm-hmm.
War. But yeah,
Yeah.
Artificer's coming back. We've got 22 new subclasses, and I think they're all based from like previous UA. Um,
Yeah.
Alternate class features for every class, similar to class feature variants. There was a really big thing that came out of like differing class features or feats,
Mm.
that kind of gave you a very like small, low key amount of another class, which was kind of cool. And I think that's going to be a part of it. Yeah, Artificer's getting reprinted with new infusions. I think they're actually adding a new subclass called Armor Specialization. Um,
Oh my god, that looks cool.
yeah,
But yeah.
bards are getting some new. Like everyone's getting new stuff. They're also um, they're adding psionic stuff into this, so we're gonna see psionic mind sorcerer. Although that I think that title's pending. I'm according to the notes that I have that this is conflicting with another class or whatever. Warlocks are getting a genie patron, which is fucking rad. Um, and I think the one thing that I'm at least I'll start with like kind of like the big thing that I'm super hyped about is the new lineage system that they're including.
Yes, for
Um,
sure.
I know there was there was a lot of outcry for Wizards of the Coast during, during earlier this, or even just a few months ago, with like a lot of like the um with the way they dealt with race in the past, and some of the kind of unsavory, is that the word I'm looking for, not super great way they treated certain races in Dungeons and Dragons.
Mm-hmm.
um But apparently, this new lineage system is going to allow new customization of characters, including ability score modifier changes, disentangling personal traits from cultural traits. Um, they can completely create new custom lineages disconnected from anything in the player's handbook, with like kind of fill in the blank style questions, sort of like the Xanathar's like how like live your life thing,
Yeah.
stuff like that. And I'm really excited for that because I think one of the big things about making a character is often you want your +2 to match what class you're playing and like what their primary stat is. And
Mm-hmm.
so oftentimes you're like, oh, well, if I want to play a paladin, I need somebody with good charisma or con or strength or whatever. And so like you're limited because not all classes get a +2 to their charisma. Now it kind of seems like you don't have to worry about that anymore, which is
Yeah.
super cool. It's going to open up some really interesting doors for a lot of new things.
Yeah. I've that's something that as soon as I heard about it, I became incredibly curious about it. Just because I think that a lineage system is something that was kind of a long time coming in Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah,
Um,
it's actually super weird that we're only seeing it now in 5th edition
sure.
after kind of some events in 2020 which kind of led
Yeah.
to this kind of movement.
Yeah, and I mean, it's like, obviously, I think it stems from, in a way, like, they wanna make an elf unique from a dwarf, unique from a tiefling or whatever.
Sure.
But, like, it's just this idea that we are, uh, all the experience that was is that we bring to the table, and that there shouldn't be anything that, like, makes a person more charismatic than another person because of, like, we're all unique individuals, and you can have a very charismatic dwarf or a very constitution heavy, tiefling or things like that, because
Right.
uh
100%.
I think in terms too, it helps us to build more unique and dynamic backstories for the characters. I'm actually super curious to see how this turns out because I've played around with at least one game system that had a lineage system where you kind of went through like what your like great great grandparents did and your grandparents did and your parents did, and then it ultimately ends up in you, and like it actually takes up a pretty it was an interesting thing because it took up a big chunk of time. I don't know if Wizards will do something quite that dynamic, but I think it would be cool if you played sort of like very, very quick lifestyle lives of your previous parents and like what that kind of brings forth and what it kind of pushes back based on, the lived experiences of, like, oh, your grandfather rose through the ranks and became like a minor knight. And so because of that, you're given like this and this. Um, and then, oh, your father decided to go to the academy instead. So you lost this, but you gained this. I think that'd be kind of neat.
That would be neat. I'm excited to see how it goes. I knowing fifth edition, I don't know if it'll ever be that complex. Just because, like,
Yeah.
in my brain space, like it. Not that it goes against what 5e is, but like they're definitely 5e. I think will first and foremost always be like one of the quote unquote easier of the Dungeons and Dragons games to get into. And that might create too much complexity for them. But I would be really excited to see that because I agree. I think it would be really cool to see a custom lineage that allows like changes how your base like your the base of your character kind of goes, or like how they deal with that, because like I'm I would just we spent almost an entire year building characters for our little garbage kid during the early days of this. So like having this on top of that is like a really cool way to like kind of custom craft your character before you're even at the table.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, obviously there's going to be new spells, but like, they're spells. I just seeing names and whatnot is kind of whatever.
Yeah, it's
Um,
it's one of those things where with most spells you kind of need to read the text and see how useful they'll be in
yeah.
situations. I was kind of
Um,
hoping that there might be some tweaking of the magic system.
I
Sort of
would
like,
love for them to tweak the magic system a little bit, but it kind of seems like they're really just kind of adding a lot of
yeah,
spells that got into the UA, which is fine.
I've said
Um,
it before, I'll say it again. I wish you had separate spell slots for like combat spells and out of combat spells just because you hold on to those precious spell slots so much and it's like,
right,
well, it
right,
could have been cool to use a non-combat spell, but what if I get into combat?
right, right. Yeah, it's tough. Though I am excited about the magic items because they are bringing in not only like interesting magical weapons that aren't just like +1 or +2, but they're also bringing in magical tattoos and
Mhm.
more specifically like more class specific magic items. Like one that they announced was a bell branch, which was a tree limb spell casting focus for druids and warlocks that like has some kind of mechanical benefit. Um, One of them is an illusion spell book for wizards that to the wizard looks like a spell book, but actually looks like a steamy romance novel to other
Mhm.
people. Um, they're doing something. They're calling it extra planar shards for sorcerers, but I'm curious what they're gonna do for sorcerers to like change, like, because I at least from what as doing my digging into this, they're supposedly going to do mechanical changes. Like these items are going to mechanically change sorcerers to a certain degree. So I'm curious what that's going to be.
Yeah. Hey, I have a
Plus,
question about the magic tattoo, do you think?
yeah,
Do you think that this will like so it improves unarmored AC. Um
yeah.
do you think that it will have any impact on characters who are already wearing armor, or do you think that wearing armor negates the impact of having like a cool magical tattoo? Like, do you think if you did
And
it
for
on your
this,
wrist, it could be a buckler style
yeah,
situation?
so I think what's going to happen is that one might be a magical tattoo for barbarians and monks who,
Monks, yeah.
right. But I have to imagine that there are going to be tons of different magical tattoos where, like, oh, one lets you, like, and I have to imagine they cost a lot of money. Like, people who apply these are, like, you know, practically, like, they're probably artificers to some degree. It's almost like having a magic item imbued to your body. And I have to imagine there's going to be a ton of different ones. Like, there might be one where it's like, oh, your tattoo stores a spell slot or
Mhm.
something where, like, oh, now all of a sudden if I have an extra spell at the end of the day, I can keep hold of one of those for the next time I fight, which could be really cool.
Yeah.
I also have to imagine that they're going to do stuff like, oh, there's a magic tattoo where, like, if you punch, fire comes out or something, like maybe some, like, kind of airbending or firebending shit, like that could be cool. But the part that I guess I'm the most excited for, because I am a dungeon master, and this is the kind of stuff that gets me going, are all the DM tools. They got
Mm.
supernatural environments and natural hazards. They're gonna add puzzles and traps to add into your game, and the puzzles require teamwork. I feel like puzzles are one of those things that, like, they do a really good job in the adventure books on, like, really cool puzzles, but, like, the trap stuff in Xanathar's guide was so, like, kind of like, whatever. Like, it was just kind of like, let's add three traps together and make it more complicated, which is, like, cool.
Mhm.
But I love me a good puzzle, and I know you guys, I know our party loves puzzles, so I'm excited to see what they throw in here.
Yeah.
I guess they're bringing back sidekicks.
Yeah, that looked like a
Which,
lot of fun, actually.
yeah, they were introduced in an Unearthed Arcana forever ago, and then printed in, like, a essentials kit, which was, I believe, the more modern version of the original 5e, like, starter pack, basically.
Mhm.
um so that'll be really cool, because, like, I love introducing characters who are, like, not quite as strong as the heroes, but, like, could potentially aid you in combat or, like, aid you in a check. And it's always kind of annoying to pull up, like, a weird stat block and trying to, like, form a sidekick, if you will.
Sure.
um but also, it's weird, there's a sidekick class intended for new players or players who want a chill experience. That sounds kind of cool. Like, ooh, like, I could see, like, hey, me and my buddies are playing D&D on Friday. I know we're supposed to hang out. Like, do you want to join us? I've got, like, a character you can play, and you can just, like, hang out. And, like, it doesn't have to be like, oh, I'm a level 5 wizard, so I have to know all this shit. Like, you can just play one of these. Like, that could be a really cool uh thing to do as well.
Yeah, I think that's something that kind of was the intriguing thing about it is like for a player who isn't necessarily entirely sure that they want to participate in a game, you know,
Yeah.
and you can kind of give it with the full understanding and the full knowledge that like, hey, come into our session, hang out for a little bit, you know, like just try out this sidekick character and as they're playing, as they're watching everyone else kind of having fun, it's like, hey, do you mind if I come back next week? And it's like, well, hey, yeah, you know what? Let's build you an actual, like, let's build you another character. And if they're like, oh, no, no, I want to stick with the sidekick, like, maybe A, that's cool. Maybe that's what they want to do. Or B, that
Yeah.
can be a nice little, like, introduction point for a person joining into the D&D world in a way that isn't necessarily like, here's a million, you know, spell slots, get going,
Yeah,
bud.
like, here's all this stuff. Like, yeah, it's definitely cool to be like, hey, you want to be a spellcaster, but, like, are really intimidated by all this shit? Because, like, I know that feel. I
Mhm.
didn't play a wizard for a really, or, like, a magic class for a really long time, because of how daunting that is.
Yeah,
Like,
for sure.
how my first dip into that was a warlock, where there get super limited spell slots. So I get having like a quote unquote chill experience to like kind of, ease into those waters. And then when you get really into it, you can be like, yeah, not I'll play a level 20 wizard. Fuck it, YOLO. Like
YOLO.
yeah. I was looking through this list and group patrons sounds really rad. It kind of the way it's described, I guess it first got introduced in Eberron, but each group patron option comes with its own perks and types of assignments, and group patrons are powerful NPCs. So it kind of sounds like what I did for your guys' campaign. So I'm curious as to
Mm.
how they I will be curious to see what they do to that, because I used Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica to represent factions within the city. Um, so I'll be curious if group patrons is more in line with what I was looking for versus factions. Not that I'm unhappy with what I'm doing now, but like I'm always curious how they do this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think I hope it kind of creates a feel of like Lords of Waterdeep, which is a game that I had great times playing. I think that this is something that could potentially be really cool for a more like city based or like hub based game. Um Versus, like the greatest adventure Tolkien, like walking across the face of Middle Earth kind of situation.
Right, right.
Um so once again, it's another thing that, like, as I look at it, I'm going to be very curious to see what it looks like. Like, is this potentially going to make a way for a more like Blades in the Darky kind of experience, or building up kind of like a heisty situation, things like that.
Yeah.
So it's something that, once again, like, that was another thing that kind of uh piqued my interest as I looked at this list, was this idea of um like, it says they come with their, so like working for a guild gives you perks, or maybe specialty assignments that you might not be able to access if you're not part of this organization. I think it too, like, it might help to build something of like a Skyrim feel.
Yeah.
I know a friend of mine kind of jokes, and honestly he's not super wrong about this, where it's like one of the most ridiculous things about Skyrim is that it's like can join the Thieves Guild, and then you can basically like go and join like the Cops Guild. Like, I know that's not
Yeah.
100% true, but it's like you can join the Thieves Guild, and then you can join like the Warriors Guild, where like we are trying to be on the side of right, and then it's like, all right, now I'm gonna go join the Dark Brotherhood, a
And
league of shadowy
assassinate people.
assassins.
Yeah.
And it's just like, man, Skyrim's really chill that they let one dude into all of these different organizations, and they're not
A
like,
100%.
it's like, huh, weren't you part of the thieves? Nah, never mind, whatever, who cares?
Right.
Like,
Yeah, I
but
mean,
yeah,
there's
go ahead.
just so much in here. Like they're doing rules for session 0, which arguably is one of those weird things that like you always hear about online, or like, you're listening to these podcasts, or to these, or watching these videos or whatever, and there's always this talk about session 0, but like nowhere in the player's handbook, nowhere, basically anywhere in 5th edition do they call out for like a pre-discussion of what's going to happen. Like, you just had to figure that out on your own, and it causes a lot of issues by not having a session 0 in a lot of cases. Like,
Mhm.
expectations aren't met or changed or what have you. So it really does, and this is going to sound corny, but it really does feel like they thought of everything that they don't have so far, and like really just kind of like, well, let's add it all in there. Like, it it is, I'm hype, man. Like, I don't usually
Yeah.
get this hype for a D&D book, but I love the supplement books like this. Like,
Mhm.
I think the last book that I was really pumped about was Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica, because I found out that like a good chunk of like the first half of the book is basically just DM tools and like really cool things to add to your game, and I was like, yes, and I
Mhm.
still reference that book all the time. So
Yeah.
I hope it's the same here.
I'm curious too, like, I'm excited too just because, um, Xanathar has kinda opened up a lot of worlds in terms of, as, like, a player, the "this is your life" thing, which I haven't necessarily I used elements of it as I was building this character,
Sure.
that I'm playing right now. I have built a character kind of whole cloth, and it was kind of fun just to see, like, the contradictory characters that something like that might build. But once again, it didn't necessarily do anything mechanical or change up too much about like what your character ended up being in terms of like the lineage system is something that I'm just so curious about just because I love a good complex character creation system.
Yeah.
Um, I do think like I love playing the game and I love um all of the stuff around it, but I do think one of my favorite things is building that character, and just kind of like going through and like coming with an idea of like the kind of character that I want to build. And so this time I kind of I wanted to do something that was like totally different than anything I'd ever done before. And so I'm just so curious to see how the lineage system plays out. I would love to, like, when it comes out, if it's cool with the party, like maybe everyone build a character using Tasha's and like, doing like a mini side campaign just like because I want to try it out so badly. I want to try out some of these new subclasses without necessarily sacrificing the sanctity of the character that I'm playing right now,
Yeah.
you know?
I would be definitely cool with doing either a one shot or like a series, like a small series where like we take a break from this major conspiracy plot and like follow other people within this
Yeah.
universe to like so we can try it out for sure.
Yeah.
Because that sounds super exciting.
Yeah, and just
Um,
like I said, I don't want to necessarily put Bamish on the sideline or change anything radical about him. Like I don't want
right.
him to suddenly become a new kind of artificer or go back and like change his base stats to its core or anything like that. Just because it's like that's not the character I'm playing right now. That's not the person I have created using the the point buy system and leveling and all of that stuff. But it's hard not to be tempted. It's like that meme of the guy like looking over his shoulder at the other girl, and
Yeah.
it's like the girl looking at me and my girlfriend looking at me in disgust is like my current player, and then it's like looking over my shoulder and it's like Tasha's Cauldron of Everything's like lineage build system. It's like, ooh, that looks like a lot of fun.
Also, I skipped over this and I
Oh yeah,
shouldn't have. The Taroka deck. And if you're familiar, it's a deck that you could interact with and even buy a physical copy for Curse of Strahd, which they're also doing a reprint of, which is nice. Is an actual artifact which can trap spirits and has already been used to trap evil spirits who could get out. And now I have an idea for a Ghostbusters campaign that I can't get out of my head to save my life. I'm
mm-hmm.
just saying. We could
Yeah.
bring back the Ghostbusters.
Do 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 do.
I like it. Um,
Ghostbusters.
so of the class or the subclasses or yeah, the subclasses that have been named
Yeah.
in our little list. Are you what is the one you're the most excited about?
You know, I always do love playing around with new cleric stuff
Yeah,
just because I find the clerics I feel like the cleric
they got a good kit,
subclasses,
man.
yeah, it's always kind of been interesting. Um so I don't know what the order domain looks like. There was a domain in some I think it was like an unearthed arcana, so one that wasn't necessarily play tested, but it had like how they all have the things like at level 2 you can do dot dot dot,
Right, right.
or rather one of the spells that you are given at whatever level is called Duel, which is, I think it was like the protection subclass. And
Sure.
if it popped up in another book, I think they removed this particular feature from it. Was like you could challenge, like basically you would cast a duel, and it was like if the character you cast it on, if they fail like a wisdom save, if they try to attack a character other than yours, they roll at disadvantage. And so it's like you can basically demand that this character fight you and only you at like risk of it just sucking.
Sure.
Um, I don't know. That was. I'm wondering if that's like what the order domain is going to be. Obviously, like psionic was kind of broken in the Unearthed Arcana.
Yeah, when they were doing the base psionic class was broken AF. I'm actually playing in a game right now, or rather I'm running a side game
Mm-hmm.
where one of the characters is a psionic mind sorcerer. From the UA anyways, not from whatever is in here. So far it hasn't been game breaking or anything like that, but it's definitely unique. It adds a they have a psychic talent die where they can kind of push their sorcerer effects on all their spells, but every time they do that, they roll a die, and if they roll high, the die decreases until a d4, and when you roll a 4 on the d4, it's gone, and you can no longer do that for the day. Um, and
Yeah.
then if you roll a 1, it increases, and it's a neat concept, but ultimately the uh, the amount of times you can use it during a day is a little ridiculous because you could just continue to use it until you hit that, until you hit a high number.
Mm-hmm.
So like I had a game, or we had a session where they used one of their psionic mind talents, like literally, like I think it was like 10 times in a single session, and it was over the course of like a single day, and it was just wild how strong that felt, because like part of it is like, oh, I can make my spells subtle, like they don't cost material components, and I don't need verbal or semantic components to them. So it's
Mm-hmm.
basically the subtle spell meta magic, except as a psionic spell.
Yeah.
And it's so wildly strong in a setting where you're trying to be secretive about your spell casting, that like that day they got away with so much stuff, because it's like, well, he's got this crazy meta magic thing
Yeah.
where all of his stuff is done in his brain and no one can detect it.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to see how they do, how they deal with this one, because it definitely is like, it's very swingy. Like some days you're just going to get absolutely destroyed by the die, and sometimes you're not. But some of those abilities are super strong. Like being able to psychically connect with somebody for
Mm-hmm.
X amount of hours over X amount of miles is pretty wild. Um, so we'll have to see. I think the one I'm really excited about is the Genie Patron.
Yeah.
Um, is one that's like, ooh, I saw it and I was really interested in it, but I never got to like play test it or anything like that. And I'm really curious to see, at least from my notes, there's a new version of the Blade Singing Wizard School, which was originally
Mm.
printed in the Sword Coast Adventures Guide. So I'm curious what the new version of that is, and if it's going to be closer to the Gish melee spellcaster style class that people are looking for out of fifth edition, because I feel like there's a lot of good steps towards a magic melee hybrid build, but don't they all kind of have their faults, and they all feel like they don't quite imitate some of those options that like other editions had. So we'll see. I'm excited about it.
Yeah, me too.
I mean, I'm
Um
excited about this whole fucking book. Like it. it might be one of the first D&D books I just sit down and read cover to cover as soon as it shows up on my door.
Yeah,
That's what I did with
agreed.
Xanathars. I was just like, oh fuck yeah, and just like went ham on that thing.
Yeah, I agree. It's gonna be wild, and I'm looking forward to playing around with it.
Hell
But
yeah.
hey, Cody, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
If people liked what they heard in this episode and they want to learn more, where's a place that they can learn more?
They can go to our website at www.fandomroulette.com where they can see all the shows that we're up to. This is actually a pretty rare case of us just doing the Fandom Roulette podcast. So if you want to see our current shows, you can go there and see what we're doing these days. And if you scroll down past when I'm streaming and all that good stuff, you can get to a little forum area where you can kind of fill out what you would like us to talk about on our various tabletop role playing game shows. Maybe you want us to revisit Fandom Roulette podcast with like a certain topic in mind. It doesn't have to be tabletop role playing games, but let us know what you would like to hear, and we will do that.
And hey, Cody, if people want to share this show with their friend, and they want to learn a little bit more, or they don't use the same podcasting apps that their friend uses, where are some places that people can find episodes of our show?
Oh man, we're all over the place. YouTube, SoundCloud, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, iTunes, all your podcast catchers. All you got to do is search Fandom Roulette.
And hey, are there any social media outlets where people can come and send us funny memes, or say hey, or engage with us on the interwebs?
Absolutely. You can. We have a Twitter, which is fandomr_podcast, where a lot of our updates go. So if you're looking to find updates as to what we're doing, whether it's podcast uploads or stream times, whatever we might be updating, you can find us there. And if you're looking to send memes or just talk to us in general, and you're not a Twitter person, you can find us on Facebook and Instagram. All you got to do is search Fandom Roulette.
Also, please remember to like, rate, review, subscribe, share to a friend, ring the bell,
Yeah.
leave a comment, help us move up those ladders, because any little bit you can help us out with means that we can give you that good content and fun conversations about nerdy things.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Phantom Roulette. We know that you can spend your time lots of places, and we want to thank you for choosing to spend it with us. Um,
Yeah.
Signing off for Phantom Roulette, this is Joe.
Now I'm Cody.
And as always, stay nerdy.
Stay super nerdy.